President.
Senator from Georgia.
Mr. President, I have 9 grandchildren. 7 of them are 11 or under. 2 of them are in college. Those 7 that are 11 or under represent the joy of my life and the life of my children. But tonight, when you and I go to bed, and each member of this Senate goes to bed, somewhere back in our state, young women and young children the same age as my grandchildren will be bought and sold into slavery. They will be trafficked as human beings for sex workers, for pornography workers, and for workers themselves. It is wrong for the greatest nation on the face of this earth and the richest nation on the face of this earth to have a crime of human trafficking take place day in and day out. I'm so proud of Senator Cornyn and others in this Senate who've brought forward the bill that's before us today. And I want to appeal for a moment for those who are holding it up to go to cloture to ask themselves this question when they go to bed tonight. When you put your head on that pillow, some child somewhere in your state is going to be trafficked for sex purposes or pornography. Some young life, some life of innocence is going to be ruined. I think it's time for us to put aside any differences we may have on this legislation and move it forward so that we add for the first time a focus on human trafficking and the abuse of kids. This is a serious problem in my state of Georgia. Atlanta has one of the highest rates of trafficking of any city in the United States, I'm told. Our Attorney General, Sam Olens, has said the following, and I quote, "Human trafficking is a modern-day slavery, plain and simple. It robs children of their innocence and their dignity. We must combat this evil. And it's appropriate that the most deliberative body in the world, the United States Senate, begin to put together a framework where we confront child slavery, sex trafficking, and the targeting of our children in multiple ways. We need to provide them with benefits to be able to be protected. A lot of that's in terms of housing and safe havens, but a lot of it's in terms of other things. We need to increase the federal resources for victims of trafficking, number one. A lot of kids that are trafficked and get out of trafficking, get out of possession, end up having serious problems in their lives with PTSD and TBI. The trauma of being abused as a child is as rough as the trauma of the battleground in Afghanistan or Iraq. We must provide the safe havens and the therapy and the mental health care that's necessary to help them bring back their life. I gave a graduation speech 5 years ago to a young lady who was 22 years old, graduating from high school. She had dropped out of high school, pregnant at the age of 15. She had come under the spell of a trafficker who took her in, made her a sex worker, and she ended up having 3 additional children. She was almost lost for life. But finally, some good person found her. They brought her into the county school system. They found a way for her to go to the alternative school. She ended up graduating number 1 in her class and going to Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. A life that was saved, but only saved because people reached out to her. We need to encourage that and produce that. Back in my home state of Georgia, in my hometown of Roswell, Georgia, there's a guy by the name of Dave McCleary. Dave McCleary is a Rotarian who 2 years ago took this project on as his passion, to be a spokesman for those that are abused, those that are trafficked, and those that are thrown into prostitution and pornography. He's made a major difference in Rotary clubs around Georgia, now activating themselves to pay attention to this terrible disease and this terrible affliction. We need to recognize child pornography as a form of human trafficking so victims have access to support. And we need to require that traffickers be treated as violent criminals to protect the victims and witnesses. And most importantly of all, we need to help state and local governments fight human trafficking through increased shelter, law enforcement, task forces, and problem-solving cures for people with these problems. We also need to get to the floor for another reason. Senator Corker in the Foreign Relations Committee has a bill which would be an amendment to this bill which expands our human trafficking response. We can't get to that until we get to cloture, and we can't get to cloture until we get 60 votes. So I appeal to the members of the Senate to find common ground to let this debate come to the floor so that when you lay your head on the pillow tonight, instead of thinking about a child that's being abused, you think about an abuse that you're avoiding because the United States Senate took action on human trafficking. Mr. President, I'd like to separate my further remarks from the remarks I just made in the